Yes, so again, we're continuing our discussion of the Chalukas Haaretz. So today I'm going to take something a little one step further. I mentioned to you that there is a fundamental machlokes, Rashi and the Ramban, on how Eretz Yisrael was divided according to Shvatim. And really, even though I say it as a machlokes Rishainim, the truth of the matter is it's in the Boyalahu in the Gemara itself. The Gemara itself has two tzadim. And that is, according to Ramban, I'll mention Ramban first because that's an easier shita, Eretz Yisrael was divided into equal chalokim. Every shevet got the same. Now here's a little tricky. It doesn't mean the same amount of land, but it means the same value of land. Right? Every shevet. So a large shevet got the same territory as a small shevet. I compared it to the Senate of the United States, where big states and small states only have 2 senators each. Now, and therefore, only after each shevet got the same portion of land did we then subdivide it among members of the shevet. Now, according to Ramban, that would mean that people, you'll remember, he said this, people in large tribes got less land or value, whatever it is, than people in small tribes. Because if a large population tribe gets the same land, I'll use same amount of land, but you understand when I say amount, they actually mean value. But if people in large tribes get the same amount of land as people in small tribes, that means the small tribes are dividing up the land into fewer parts than the large tribes. So the kasha on the Ramban would be the apparent inequality of Chalukah. Why should a person in Shevet Yehuda get less land than a person in, let's say, Shevet Naphtali, which is smaller? But this is the Ramban Shita. Every tribe had an equal portion. Now, the problem basically is that if you look at maps of Eretz Yisrael divided, like at the end of the art school, you see that the different tribes have different sizes. But the answer would be, number one, maybe those are not reflecting the Ramban Shita. And number two, given the fact that when I say equality, it's not equality of area, it's equality of value, so it could be that even a large section might have an economic value equal to a small section, meaning you don't have a raya from that. Now, in terms of testing this proposition empirically, well, you'd have to do something that we're not able to do here, and maybe nobody can really do it. And that is, you'd have to go over all of the cities that are mentioned in each tribe and try to see if this is true. Meaning, there may be a shaila that the Ramban's Hashara may not fit the actual geographical points that are mentioned. Every shevet, it mentions these are the boundaries, these are the cities, etc. According to the Ramban, everybody's dealing with an equal portion. This is Shitas Ramban. Shitas Rashi is that the bigger the tribe, the bigger the territory. Meaning to say, the territory was expanded, again, in value, based on the size of the population, like the House of Representatives, which means if bigger tribes got more land and smaller tribes got less land, every individual Jew got the same amount of land. Because the bigger tribe had more land to divide, so when you divide it, a Yid gets a chelik, and the smaller tribe had less land to divide, so his chelik would be the same. Which means the Maila, according to Rashi, is that by giving bigger tribes bigger portions, that ensured that no matter what tribe you were in, you got the same amount of land, and that would be, again, a similar politically to the House of Representatives. Right? So this is a big machlokes, Rashi and the Ramban. But then we have to go to a further question, which is actually, and this question is not really discussed in Sefer Yeshua at all, but it's discussed in the Gemara, Biarichos, and that is, once a tribe got its portion, whether it was equal to every other tribe like Ramban, or whether it varied based on size, how do you then subdivide it to families? right? You're a member of Shevet Yisachar, right? You want to know, when are you going to get your land, assuming it was conquered. Again, some land wasn't conquered, then you're really in trouble. But assuming it's conquered, when do I move in? How is it divided? So here is what the Gemara has another shaila about this. There are two countings of the Jewish people in the Torah. Both of them are in the book of Bamidbar. There is in fact, that's why the English title for Bamidbar is actually a very accurate title. It is called the Book of Numbers. And actually, that corresponds to Chazal's name for Sefer Bamidbar, which is Chumash HaPikudim, the Chumash of countings. There is a counting in Parshas Bamidbar of every tribe. And there is from the age of 20 up. Shevet Levi was counted from 30 days, but other tribes other than Levi are counted from 20 years old up. And then there is a second counting in Parshas Pinchas after the 40 years where the old generation died. And it counts from 20 up, all who are going to be entering the land of Israel. So census number 1, which was shortly after they left Mitzrayim, 13 months after they left Mitzrayim, Eor, is the counting of the Yotzei Mitzrayim. Census number 2, which is in year 40, is the counting of the Bo'ei Ha'aretz, those who are going to be entering Eretz Yisrael. Both of them are limited to men who are 20 years old or older. But it's a different population base. The population base of the first census is Yotzei Mitzrayim. The population base of the second census are Bo'ei Ha'aretz. What is interesting is the total population of both groups is identical, 603,000. Plus a little bit more. But what is also interesting is, on the individual tribal levels, I just sit and write down the numbers in Parshas Bamidbar, how many Reuvéns, how many Shimons, how many Yehudas, and you will see that some tribes lost a lot of population, and some tribes gained a lot of population. So although the overall count is the same, because the losses and the additions match up, they correspond to each other, but individual tribes fluctuated greatly. So it is true that the land was divided, let's say within a tribe right now. How it was divided among the tribes is the Machlokas Rashi and the Ramban. But let's talk about within a tribe. Shevet Yisachar is given land. Okay. You divide it in accordance to the population as recorded in one of those two censuses. But the question is, do you base it on the census of Yotzei Mitzrayim? Or do you base it on the census of Bo'ei Ha'aretz? Now, again, let me illustrate this with an example, because this is actually a bit of a complicated cheshbon. First of all, in order to be Naitel L'Chelik in Eretz Yisrael, there were a few conditions. Only men got portions in Eretz Yisrael, and women could only get it through inheritance, like the daughters of Slavchet. And number 2, the man had to be at least 20 years old. Anyone who was younger than 20 was not Naitel Chelik B'Yaretz. So the two conditions are male and 20. But which population group are you using to make that determination? Are you using the population group that left Mitzrayim? Or are you using the population group that came into Eretz Yisrael? So, for example, if you use the population group that left Mitzrayim, that means every man who left Mitzrayim and was 20 years old at the time of the Exodus is entitled to a portion in Eretz Yisrael. Now, it happens to be that every man who was 20 years old at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim died in the 40 years in the desert. But he would pass on the chelek that eventually would fall to him to his Yorshim. Now, let's analyze Benos Selofchad in this way, because if you say Ki Yotzei Mitzrayim, the story of Benos Selofchad is very, very understandable. Selofchad, who is of the tribe of Menashe, he happens to be, but he's right. Selofchad of the tribe of Menashe was 20 years old at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And Selofchad had brothers who were also 20 years old, right? So he and his brothers left Mitzrayim. Selofchad's father, whose name was Chefer, also left Mitzrayim. So, in terms of who gets a share in Eretz Yisrael, Chefer gets a share, Selofchad gets a share, and all of Selofchad's brothers get shares. Now, Chefer died in the desert, and Selofchad died in the desert, and Selofchad's brothers died in the desert over the 40 years. So here's what we say. The daughters of Selofchad are not entitled on their own to get a share in Eretz Yisrael, but they are entitled to inherit the share that would have gone to their father, even though their father died in the desert. This is if you look at Boy Ha'aretz, that the land was divided, LeBoy Ha'aretz. So, as a result, the Mishnah in Bava Basra says that the daughters of Selofchad had 3 claims for 3 different portions. Number 1, they claim the portion of Selofchad. Selofchad is entitled to 1 portion. They claim that portion as heirs because there are no sons. And of course that means that portion would be divided 5 ways. But in addition, when Chefer died, Selofchad and his brothers inherited Chefer's portion. So Selofchad has a portion of his father's Chefer's property, which is then inherited by his daughters. So the daughters have Selofchad's portion in its entirety, and his daughters have a portion of Chefer's portion that would be divided between Selofchad and Selofchad's brothers. And then finally the Mishnah says that Selofchad was a Bechor. Now the rule of a Bechor is a Bechor inherits a double portion. So when Chefer died, let's assume, how many brothers? I think there were 5 brothers of Selofchad. I don't remember that. There are 5 daughters of Selofchad for sure, but let's just go with an example. There are 5 brothers of Selofchad, so that's a total of 6. So a Bechor is like an extra brother. So as a Bechor, Selofchad would get 2/7 of the property. So Selofchad has his own property. Selofchad inherits 1/7 as a son and 1 extra 7th as a Pishnayim. And therefore his daughters will inherit from Selofchad everything Selofchad gets. So the daughters of Selofchad had 3 claims to land in Eretz Yisrael. They are Yorshos, of Selofchad's own portion. They are Yorshos of Selofchad's partial claim to the property of Chefer. And they are Yorshos of Selofchad getting a double portion in the property of Chefer. Okay? Now, all of this fits beautifully if you say Eretz Yisrael was divided based on the population base that left Mitzrayim. Meaning every man that was 20 years old when he left Mitzrayim has a share in Eretz Yisrael. He doesn't know what that share is yet. And Lamaisa, he never gets it because he dies in the desert. But it belongs to him. When it's eventually allocated, it is deemed to be his property all the way back from Yetzias Mitzrayim. And as a result, women can get a share of that if they are the heirs of their father because their father has no sons. That's exactly what Benos Tzlafchad established. Now, this is the Shita that says Eretz Yisrael was divided based on the population group that left Egypt, meaning those who were 20 at the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and that is picked up in the census in Parshas Bamidbar. But there's another opinion that says Eretz Yisrael was divided based on the generation that came into Eretz Yisrael. Now, you immediately have a tremendous problem there. According to that, Tzlafchad did not have a portion in Eretz Yisrael because he died before he came. Chafer didn't have a portion. The only people that have portions are people who come at the age of 20. But if that's true, literally, then the daughters of Tzlafchad are entitled to zero because in order to have a claim to Eretz Yisrael as a boy Oretz, you have to be a 20-year-old male. There's nothing, I mean, you can't answer me, well, the daughters of Tzlafchad inherited their father's portion. Their father doesn't have a portion. Eretz Yisrael was nischalek based on boy Haaretz. Tzlafchad was not boy Haaretz. Chafer was not boy Haaretz. The brothers of Tzlafchad, or at least the sons of the brothers, some of them may have been younger, they came to Eretz Yisrael. They get a share. But the daughters of Tzlafchad have no claim. In other words, the claim, they are claiming they're inheriting the portion that will be given to their father is by definition not a claim because their father has no portion if I say, boy aretz nischalek. So how do we understand, bichlal, the taina of the daughters of Tzlafchad? Right? Yeah, it's true. The halacha is true. A daughter can inherit her father's property if there are no sons. That's a true halacha. But it's not going to benefit them because Tzlafchad had no property which his daughters would inherit if I hold boy aretz. So because of this, the Gemara introduces a complication, a real monkey wrench in all of this. And that is, there is no such thing as a pure boy aretz chalukah, meaning there is a man diyamar that says Yotzei Mitzrayim legamri. You just look at Yotzei Mitzrayim. But the one that says boy haaretz, it's not quite boy haaretz. It's a little bit of a composite. And that is called hachzaras nachala, a reversal of the laws of inheritance. And what that means is the following. Normal Yerusha is hachayim yorshim esamesim. Right? How does inheritance work? People who are alive inherit from people who are dead. Right? That's Yerusha. Yerusha is hachayim yorshim esamesim. Here, the Torah is creating a gzeres hakosov that the mesim are yorshim esachayim. How does that work? The land is allocated to the boy haaretz. At that level, The daughters of Tzlafchad get nothing. Everything is given to the 5 brothers of Tzlafchad. Because Boy Haaretz means 20 years old and male. But after the land is allocated to Boy Haaretz, the generation that left Mitzrayim, who are dead, become the inheritors of the land. And then it goes back down to the order of Yerusha, which means the 5 portions that the brothers of Tzlafchad got in Eretz Yisrael, not through Yerusha because they claimed it, go back to the earliest ancestor who left Mitzrayim. So the earliest ancestor who left Mitzrayim, not Tzlafchad is a brother, but you're going paternal line. It goes from the brothers of Tzlafchad to Chefer. Chefer, who's dead, inherits the portion of his sons. He then is morishet to all of his heirs. So the 5 portions go up to Chefer, and then they go down from Chefer to Tzlafchad and the sons, and then the daughters get Tzlafchad's portion. Which means this is a process what's called, again, reverse Yerusha. Hachzaras Nachala. Hamesim Yorshim Esachayim. But that actually means what the daughters of Tzlafchad get is not the same as what they get under the Yotzei Mitzrayim formula. Under the Yotzei Mitzrayim formula, they inherit Tzlafchad's portion. They inherit Tzlafchad's portion in Nichsei Chefer. And they inherit Tzlafchad's Pishnayim in Nichsei Chefer. But if I go with Boy Haaretz and Achzaras Nachala, they don't inherit Tzlafchad's portion because Tzlafchad still doesn't have any portion. Because reverse Yerusha from his brothers is not going to give it to Tzlafchad. So essentially it goes up to Chefer. Tzlafchad then inherits a portion of Nichsei Chefer. So his daughters will get Tzlafchad's portion b'Nichsei Chefer and the Pishnayim, but will not get Tzlafchad's own portion because Tzlafchad does not have a portion. Okay, a little complicated, but this would mean that the Mishnah that says the daughters of Tzlafchad have 3 different entitlements is only going like the Mandi Amar, Yotzei Mitzrayim, and not going like Boy Haaretz. Now, let me give you another example of how this works. Let's imagine you have Yaakov, a father, and 2 sons, we'll call it Shimon and Yehuda. Everybody's 20 years old. They leave Mitzrayim. In the course of the Midbar, Shimon has 4 sons, and Yehuda has 5 sons. Yaakov, Shimon, and Yehuda die in the desert, Chet HaMeraglim. But, forgetting my numbers, I'm sorry, I don't even know what numbers it's anymore. In other words, basically I want to create a situation where one brother has more sons than the other brother. So let's say one brother has 4 sons and one brother has 1 son, okay? And they didn't die in the Midbar because they were under 20 at the time of the Meraglim, but by the time they come to Eretz Yisrael, they're 20. So how much land, how many portions of land are they entitled to? So let's analyze this. If I say Eretz Yisrael is divided according to Yotzei Mitzrayim, so that means Yaakov gets 1 portion, Shimon gets another portion, Yehuda, I'm sorry for forgetting names, gets a 3rd portion, meaning these 3 people have 3 portions. They die in the desert. So you're left with what? 4 and 1. You're left with 4 brothers and then one person that's their cousin. So they will divide. Okay, Shimon's portion will go to his 4 kids only. Yehuda's portion will go to his 1 kid only. And Yaakov's portion will be divided equally between the 4 kids of Reuven, of Shimon, and the 1 kid of Yehuda. In other words, boy ha'aretz, and you simply apply the laws of Yerusha. Yeah.
How does the Bechor factor play in there?
So the Bechor factor would only... Okay, so the Bechor would be very relevant here, meaning to say whoever is the Bechor of Shimon will get Pi Shnayim in Shimon's property. Whoever is the Bechor of Yehuda will get a Pi... Well, Yehuda only has 1 son, so the Bechor issue is not relevant on Yehuda.
But Shimon got an extra portion of Yaakov's as well, right?
Yes, yeah, so you'd have to factor both of that in, meaning Shimon would get an extra portion of Yaakov's, and Shimon's Bechor would get an extra portion of Shimon's. And that would actually include an extra portion in the Yaakov part that went to Shimon as well. Okay? Now, so that actually means, though, putting aside Yaakov for a moment, putting aside Yaakov, which makes things complicated, in terms of Shimon and Yehuda, who are equal heirs in Yaakov's property, and in terms of Shimon and Yehuda's own property as well. So Shimon's kids get all of Shimon's property, and Yehuda's kid gets all of Yehuda's property. Now, if I operate with boy ha'aretz and achzaras nachla, it's going to be complicated because I have 4 portions go to Yehuda's sons. I'm sorry, 4 portions go to Shimon's son. 1 portion goes to Yehuda's son. But after that allocation, it goes back to the earliest person who left Mitzrayim. It goes back to Yaakov. If it goes all the way back to Yaakov, and then it goes down, that actually means some of Shimon's property is going to go to the other side. In other words, yes, Shimon's kids got 4 portions, and Yehuda's kid only got 1 portion. But once it goes back, that land is going to be divided equally between the 4 sons of Shimon and the 1 son of Yehuda, which actually means the 1 son of Yehuda is going to get a lot more land than any given one. He'll get as much as the other 4 brothers. Okay, again, I don't want to be marich on this too much because it's a bit of a complicated sugya, but just be aware of the general concept of boy ha'aretz. Well, I'm sorry, Yotzei Mitzrayim is very simple. Yotzei Mitzrayim is a pure Yotzei Mitzrayim concept. Boy ha'aretz is a composite idea of boy ha'aretz, then coupled with hachzaras nachala to the earliest ancestor who left Mitzrayim, and then you apply Yerusha in 2 directions. You apply Yerusha to go from the living to the dead, and then you apply the Yerusha from the dead down to the living. Goes up, it goes down, and it gets redivided, which would mean that boy ha'aretz determine the total amount of land that people get, but how that land is going to be subdivided is based on going up the ladder to the earliest generation that left Mitzrayim. Okay, now again, this is only an issue once there's been a tribal division. On the other hand, let me point out that according to Rashi, you kind of need to know this to make the tribal division, because according to Ramban, you make the tribal division without any reference to the size of the population of the tribe. So you just divide it into 12 equal portions. But according to Rashi, you've got to factor this in, because since according to Rashi, the size of the land will be based on the population. So what population number are you looking at? Are you looking at the population of the tribe in Parshas Bamidbar? Or are you looking at the population of the tribe in Parshas Pinchas? Because remember, the tribes changed in population. If I hold Yotzei Mitzrayim, then I divide the land into the numbers of the population in Parshas Bamidbar. If I go with Boi Haaretz, I divide it based on the population in Parshas Pinchas. So according to Rashi, I do have to consult the population base to determine how big the tribal portion is. And then, when it gets down to the nitty-gritty of dividing it, I may have to deal with the complexities of Hachzoras Nachla. You know, I think you understand why this took 7 years. I mean, one can see that it is particularly if I hold Boi Haaretz with Hachzoras Nachla, it is quite a complicated issue to work out. So, as I say, for our purposes, we're not learning Yesh Neichel in Be'iyun right now. That's the 8th parak of Bava Basra, but this is what the Gemara discusses. All right. So B'kitzur, just to summarize, we have two different machloksim in the Gemara. One is pertaining to the tribal division, and one is pertaining to the individual division. The tribal division is, were the chalakim equal, or did they vary with the size of the tribe? That's machlokas number one. Machlokas number two is, in determining the size of the tribe, for purposes of chalukah, do you look at Yotzei Mitzrayim or do you look at Boi Haaretz? And if you look at Boi Haaretz, you have to bring in the concept of Hachzoras Nachla, of what are called Mesim, Yorshim, Es Hachayim. Okay? And the truth of the matter is, if you look in Rashi in Parshas Pinchas, Rashi does actually explain it pretty well. Again, it's difficult Rashi, but I think with this background you should be able to understand what Rashi says in Parshas Pinchas. Okay? Any questions about this? So again, I don't want to be marich, because this is the truth of the matter is we could spend months on this, and whatever. Okay. Alrighty. So this is going to be the Chalukas Haaretz. Now, once again, let me throw out the idea that the notion of lottery is a little hard to fit in. Bishlama, like the Ramban, that every tribe got the same, at least value of territory or area of territory, however you define it. So we understand the logic of how a lottery works. You have, right, the Kohen has two baskets. Elazar HaKohen, wearing the Urim V'Tumim, has two baskets in front of him. In one basket are 12 tribes, not counting Levi. In the other basket are 12 districts, which were drawn up based on equality of size or value. So the Kohen matches up tribe and district. So it's going to be fine. Since all the districts are the same value or the same area, so you match up tribe and district, and the Urim V'Tumim would confirm that Min HaShamayim HaKadosh Baruch Hu was masking to it. But according to Rashi, the issue of lottery does not make sense. Because according to Rashi, larger tribes, whatever the population base, in fact, this is not even totally on which population base, but larger tribes had more land. Smaller tribes had less land. So, in basket number one, I have 12 tribes. What do I have in basket number two? 12 boundaries that are of different size depending on the tribe? Well, what happens if I draw up a small tribe and I get a big boundary? Or what happens if I draw up a large tribe and I get a small boundary? Now, you could say, okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu always made it work out. But if that's the case, there's almost no sense in doing a lottery bichlal. So, how do you understand the concept of Gairal, according to Rashi? Because you didn't have, in the other basket, 12 districts that were equal. They were different size. So I think I mentioned to you in the name of the Gra, that the Gra says that it's a little misleading. When it says that there were 12 boundaries drawn up, that's only after the Geirel assigned it to a Shevet, meaning to say, initially Eretz Yisrael was divided into regions without boundaries. So it might say northwest, southwest, middle. Didn't give you the size. And it just said the area, the district generally. So in one basket are the tribes. In the other basket are the districts without geographical boundaries. Once we match up big tribe to this district, according to Rashi, the boundaries were then drawn to reflect the size of the population. Again, whether it's Yotzei Mitzrayim or Boy HaRav. Meaning you can't understand that the lottery was already had the boundaries there. Like the Ramban, that works. It doesn't work according to Rashi. So according to Rashi, the Gra says the Geirel was based on the approximate area that the tribe would occupy, but the configured boundary was only after the tribe was chosen. You hear how, according to Rashi, this works. Now, even then, there are some problems. I think you raised the problem with Shimon. I mean, what exactly happened with Shimon? Shimon, we know, did not have a separate land. Shimon had a bunch of cities in Yehuda. So what does that mean? There was a petek, there was a card that said, cities in Yehuda. And that could have gone to some other tribe? What would it have been if Yisachar would have gotten that? Meaning, how do you put it in the boundary? I'm sorry, how do you put it in the lottery? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there are kashas here I don't fully understand. I think the lottery makes things much more complicated. The fact that both the Torah and the book of Yoshua describes Geirel seems to be contradicted by the fact that we kind of knew where different tribes would be, and that wouldn't be a product of Geirel. So again, something to think about. But other than that, the Gra works pretty well, that the Geirel did not have the boundaries yet until it was allocated to the Shevet. Okay? Okay, so we'll stop here.
Thank you for listening to this Awesome Ech production. To find out more and to partner in our mission, please visit ohr.edu.